One Question is designed to give subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to One Question, where we highlight executive leaders in college athletics. Our guest today is Joe Potuto. Joe is the Chaired Professor of Constitutional Law and Faculty Athletics Representative at University of Nebraska. Greetings, Joe. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Joe, you've been a law professor for 30 years and you've been FAR there in Nebraska for 20 years, and that gives you a wide lens of experience. You were there during the Tom Osborne years. You've been through multiple athletic directors, multiple coaches, and multiple sports over the last 20 years. Can you give us some insight on what's on the mind of those that serve in the faculty athletics representative position? What I know about the position is that the FAR is tasked with making sure that athletics is doing its job to enhance the academic mission of a university.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And many of us also have oversight of compliance, that is, rules compliance with NCAA rules and general behavioral issues with regard to athletes. But yes, you've got the gist of it.
Okay, great. So tell me what's on the minds of FARs across the country, and specifically you're at Nebraska, so that's the major college level. What's on the mind of an FAR?
Yeah, well, let me start by saying I think faculty are a little like herding cats. To suggest that there's one view of everyone is probably to suggest a world that doesn't exist.
Right.
But we probably all agree on the problems as compared to what the solutions are. And I guess I would say the overriding concern is how you make the student part of a college student experience or college student competition central to the experience.
Right.
I mean, you hear the NCAA say all the time they're students first, but then you look at the money that's coming in and you look at the time demands and everything else, even March Madness. If we were only concerned about students as students, we wouldn't put a major competition in March in the middle of an academic semester.
Right.
So I think everything that faculty reps are concerned about probably comes out of that central position, and then the spokes go in a lot of different places.
Right. So, and people have different opinions on directions of, relative to their specific campus or the conference they're in.
That's right. And you take something like transfer, which is a big issue right now. Everybody agrees. I think the one place where everyone agrees, whether it's faculty reps or ADs or anyone else, is that there should be one rule that governs the opportunity to transfer no matter what the sport is. And right now we have different rules for all the sports except the 3 or 4 that are revenue sports. So everybody agrees it's got to be one rule. When you go from that and try to decide what the rule should be, a lot of faculty believe, and I think with justification, that we should have rules in place that do not decrease the opportunity or likelihood that a student athlete won't graduate or will graduate after he or she moves to another school.
Right.
And all the research data are that with regard to student athletes or students generally, if you transfer, you're less likely to graduate. Right. So faculty is concerned about being sure that they graduate. But how you match that against a public perception that any other student can transfer anywhere she pleases, even if it decreases her opportunity to graduate. And coaches can go wherever they please. So the division comes down to whether trying to maintain the academic integrity is whether you're able to do that in the face of all the arguments in favor of letting people go if they want to go, and sometimes the coach is pushing them out. So that's where the argument is, and faculty are on both sides of that.
Okay, so I have another question here. You mentioned that FARs oversee compliance and it's tied to academics, and we see a lot of things happening in college athletics with coaches and violations. We got this FBI investigation going on, various violations, among other things. Yeah. Where is the FAR in these situations?
Yeah, and the faculty rep on campus, depending on the school, has different responsibilities. I happen to think that at least at the major schools, the FAR should have oversight responsibility. I do at Nebraska, and I think the FAR has to be informed and active in assisting in vetting issues as they come up. The presidents on our campuses are way too busy. They have lots of other stuff on their plates, and they're probably not trained to be investigators or to look into things. They have got to have somebody on the campuses doing it for them. And when they don't, you end up with Penn State or Michigan State, or, I could go on forever with these. So I think that's a role that faculty reps can play and should play. We are much more skeptical. I mean, the one reason why you go into teaching and not something else is because you ask questions about everything. And so we're skeptical. We don't take answers. Many of us are willing to push to get an answer, even if the individual we're talking to doesn't want to. And you have to have somebody on the campus who's protecting that. It's the integrity of the school. It's the well-being of the students. It's the reputation of the school. It's maintaining, avoiding legal liability. I mean, you can go forever. At Michigan State, it's protecting a situation that can really, end up in criminal prosecutions and major terrible things happening to kids on our campus. And that's got to be a central concern of the faculty. And not just a concern, we need to be involved. My claim, what I say at Nebraska is, I need to be informed and I need to be involved. You don't have to follow what I say because there are different opinions, but I need to be informed and I need to be involved. And if I feel that's not happening, then I don't want the job.
Well, that leads to my next question, that influence, right? I once heard a story about a major FBS institution that was trying to schedule a game with another school, but it didn't happen because the FAR thought the time missed in terms of travel would be detrimental to the student athletes. Can you speak to the influence that the FARs could potentially have on campus?
Yeah, it depends. At some schools and in some conferences, the FAR has to sign off on things like that. And faculty are not unreasonable about it. I mean, we understand the requirements of scheduling, and every university has a different schedule. And so you can't find a time that's a good time for every athlete. But that said, there are scheduling. I mean, in the Big Ten right now, Nebraska going to Maryland or Rutgers on the East Coast is a huge travel and time, has huge travel and time consequences. And somebody's got to be pushing on that. Now, that doesn't mean the athletics director isn't concerned about well-being and isn't concerned about academic issues, but my training is law. And the way you get the best accommodation, the optimum answer, is when people on either side are pushing and arguing about it and trying to find the right place. The athletics director clearly is interested in student-athlete well-being issues and academic issues, but he also has to worry about a schedule. He's got to worry about a bottom line, and faculty, for good or ill, don't have to worry about a bottom line.
Right. Well, how does that well, I guess it's different on every campus, but how does that conversation take place? Are you sitting at the table with the, quote, powers that be and say, I don't think this is a good idea, or? Well,
you wouldn't be able to do that because too many issues come up.
Okay.
It should never get to the point where you're in an argument about it.
Okay.
It should be pretty clear you should talk about, where the sweet spot is given all the interests, and know pretty well going in. At Nebraska, it is rare that I ever disagree with the athletics director or he with me. Now, it may be part of the time because they know I'll push back if we get to a certain point, so they just never go there. Exactly. But we don't. And so I think if you have a good relationship and you talk about it, you're in a pretty good place. And then on a campus, when one of these issues comes up, if there's usually it's not the scheduling.
Right.
It's a request to reschedule because the Big Ten Network wants to cover a game at a different time. So it's the rescheduling requests where it has to come to the faculty member to say, what are the consequences here? How many missed classes?
Right.
What's the GPA of the people we're talking about? Are these classes in their majors? Are we talking about an hour or two or 10 hours? Is there a different flight they can take? So often you can work it out on the logistics without getting to, no, you can't do it.
Right. But it comes through asking questions and pushing back in that.
That's right.
Well, I would think that you being a law professor is considered an asset at Nebraska. I mean, you've been through multiple coaches and athletic directors, and being a law professor, that level of scrutiny and skilled question asking or intentional curiosity, I guess I would say, has to be considered an asset there at Nebraska.
I hope so. But whether they think I'm an asset or not, I'm there.
Right, that's true.
And I do consulting on this, so it makes it a little easier for me, because it would be a little harder for the AD at Nebraska to say, not that he ever has, but I mean, it would be a little different to say you don't know enough to know this when somebody else is calling me in to look at the same thing. So it makes it a little easier.
Right. Well, is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you want to touch base on?
Well, if I can say one more thing.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
What's happening in Division I and in the FBS and the Autonomy 5, to use a lot of jargon, is that the faculty voice, at least in national issues, is more and more muted. There are virtually no faculty on the council. Committees have maybe one faculty member, and it's certainly not that we have the only view or we have the best view or we have, the one that has to be listened to, but I think it's an extraordinary bad process making when that viewpoint isn't there and articulated strongly in a room with athletic administrators.
So outside of being appointed to those committees and councils, which are a part of the NCAA structure, is there an alternative solution to the issue?
Well, some faculty have done things like the Drake Group, which do things outside the structure entirely and, issue press releases and things. Faculty certainly can have influence on their own campuses. If the NCAA structure reflected the way our Division I campuses are in terms of the influence and the opportunity for the faculty point of view, you'd have a different NCAA structure.
Right. Well, Joe, this has been an excellent conversation. I think there has been some excellent insight into the faculty athletics representative position. Of course, I've known you for a while and known you to be influential in the Division I FAR organization and also the FARA organization. And I really appreciate you joining us here on One Question.
Sure.
That was Joe Potuto. She's the chaired professor of constitutional law and faculty athletics representative at University of Nebraska. Her skill in intentional curiosity and scrutiny as a law professor and the FAR there at Nebraska makes her a definite asset to the athletics department. And this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of One Question is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.